Rising pop group vanished in 1986 on private jet. 19 years later, this was found on the shore. I wasn't even born when they disappeared, but I've spent the last 6 years of my life trying to understand how 5 young artists could vanish without a trace, and how the only thing ever recovered was a sun-bleached Walkman, found 19 years later, half buried in the sand like the tide had delivered it directly to me. The band was called Aurora 5. Maybe you remember them, or maybe you only think you do. That's part of what's been bothering me. Some people swear they were the next big thing in the summer of '86. Others blink and ask if I mean the Swedish synth band Aurora Drive or that British group, Five Lights. No, I mean Aurora 5, Lacey, Denny, Kim, TJ, and Marcus. 5 kids barely out of their teens, already signed to Horizon Records, their debut single on the cusp of climbing the US Top 40, featured in smash hits and hit parade magazines. Gone. The official version? Lost at sea. But if you ask anyone who lived near the San Vicente coast that July, or the ones who used to work at Horizon, you'll hear something else. Or you'll get silence. And believe me, that silence is louder than anything else. I found the Walkman in 2005. And I know how that sounds, like one of those urban legend setups, right? But I swear on my life, I didn't go looking for it. I was working freelance photo gigs for tourist weddings and weekend proposals. There's this crescent-shaped beach just south of Carver's Bluff where the sand is coarse and almost pink. Not many tourists go there, it's not on maps. That day, I'd driven down alone. Something about the fog sitting low on the water just felt magnetic. I saw it about 15 feet from the edge of the dune line, near a scattering of old driftwood. At first I thought it was trash, a cracked black shell, faded buttons, that bright orange play sticker barely clinging on. It looked like it had been torn from another decade. When I picked it up, the cassette inside was warped but legible. It said, A5 Final Cut. I didn't think anything of it until I got home and searched that label online. Nothing came up, not even a fan site. But when I posted a photo of the tape on a forum called Obscure Tapeheads, things exploded. The messages poured in, someone from Germany saying they remembered Aurora 5 playing on ZDF once in '86. A collector from Maine swore he had their 7th single but it vanished after a house fire. Another man messaged me privately with only 5 words. Do not play that tape. I played it, of course. The audio was muffled, water damaged, but about 2 minutes in, it changed. There was a voice. Just one. Female. It sounded scared, like she was trying to stay calm, like she didn't realize she was recording. July 17th, we're still in the air. They turned off the transponder. Marcus said we're rerouting to Mexico, but this isn't Mexico. Then static. Long, tearing static, followed by a low humming sound that made the hairs on my arms rise. And then, music, but not the kind I expected. It wasn't synthpop, it was almost like a lullaby. Played backwards. That's when I knew I was holding something more than a piece of lost memorabilia. That night, I dreamed of a shoreline I've never been to. Black waves, a narrow cliff, and 5 figures, silhouettes, standing at the edge of a plane's wing, staring into fog. When I woke up, the Walkman was gone. My apartment was locked. No signs of break-in. Just gone. Even the sand I'd shaken out of the headphones, gone. That should have ended it. But instead, it was the beginning. I started looking into the official report of the disappearance, which, by the way, is almost impossible to find. The FAA logged the charter flight under regional charter, musical engagement, with a tail number that doesn't match any plane ever officially registered in California. The plane took off from LAX, en route to a promotional event in Cabo San Lucas. Scheduled arrival, 4:10 p.m. It never arrived. The pilot, listed only as Captain K. Daly, had no commercial license on record. No next of kin. No history. Like a ghost. Horizon Records? Dissolved in late '86 after a financial dispute. Their main office in Burbank was cleared out overnight, according to the woman who ran the cafe across the street. She said trucks came around 2 a.m., boxes were loaded into unmarked vans, and by dawn, the place looked like it had never been there. I've since tracked down Kim's sister, though she doesn't talk publicly. She lives in Oregon now, off-grid. She agreed to speak to me under one condition: I never publish her name. We met in a church basement in Tillamook. Her hands shook the entire time. She said the last voicemail she got from Kim was strange. Kim was whispering, like she was hiding in a bathroom, asking if their dad had called. Then she said this: "If they say we're in Baja, don't believe them. That isn't where we're going. There's no festival. I saw the pilot. He's not the same man from rehearsal." Kim never called again. The cassette I found, or whatever version of it existed, it started appearing in whispers again. A DJ in Finland claimed he found a copy with the same label in a box marked Unknowns at a vinyl exchange. When he played it live during a midnight set, the stream crashed. 3 minutes before the voice was supposed to come in, the archived stream was corrupted. He said his station received a cease and desist from a Los Angeles law firm 3 days later, except the firm listed in the letter had dissolved in 1992. So here I am, telling this story, not because I think I can solve it, but because I think it doesn't want to stay hidden anymore. Maybe whatever happened over the Pacific in July of 1986 is starting to rise again. Tides always return what we try to bury. And sometimes, the music plays even when no one's there to hear it. The Walkman may have vanished, but the sound didn't. For weeks after that first playback, I kept hearing it. Low, behind white noise, inside the hum of streetlights. Even once in my shower drain. The same reversed lullaby. I'd hum it without realizing. I'd find scraps of it scribbled in the margins of my grocery list. I was losing sleep, appetite. Whatever that tape carried, it had burrowed in. I went back to the beach a few days later, Carver's Bluff, low tide. Not because I thought I'd find the Walkman again, I just couldn't stay away. And something had changed. You know when the landscape feels off? Like the sand remembers a secret. I saw drag marks. 4 distinct, narrow trenches in the sand, maybe 6 feet long, maybe more. Almost like something had been pulled out of the ocean. Near the end of one of them, I found fabric, red with gold trim. Wet, heavy, torn from something formal. A performance outfit? Stage wear? I didn't take it with me. I just stared at it. Something told me I wasn't meant to touch it. Not yet. That night, I got an email. No name, no subject. One line: "You are walking into their encore." Attached was a single photo. Grainy, faded, time-stamped July 16, 1986, the day before the disappearance. 5 figures boarding a small private jet. The tail number was clearly visible, NX041JG. I ran it through FAA databases. Nothing. No record of registration. No history. I even tried getting help from a guy who used to work maintenance at Van Nuys Airport in the 80s. He remembered the jet. Not because of who was on it, but because of who wasn't. The plane was already running, he told me, engines live. Lights blinking, but I never saw a pilot. No crew. Just those 5 kids, and a guy in a gray suit standing off to the side with his arms crossed. Didn't move. Didn't blink. Then the guy made a gesture I'll never forget. He brought his fingers up to his lips, like shish. Back in 1986, Aurora 5 had been hyped up as the American answer to ABBA. Clean image, big harmonies, but there were always whispers, weird delays, secret rehabs, mental breakdowns barely covered in the press. TJ had disappeared from a live taping of Top of the Pops mid-commercial break and reappeared 10 minutes later in the makeup trailer, soaking wet. The showrunners said it was a prank. The footage never aired, and Lacey, lead singer, 19 at the time, she was caught scribbling something in lipstick on her dressing room mirror before their last US show. Her stylist said it read, "The sky doesn't take you, it shows you back." I didn't know what any of this meant, but the deeper I went, the more I found people trying to pretend Aurora 5 had never existed. Websites would vanish after I bookmarked them. Phone numbers disconnected days after I dialed them. I kept a notebook, a hard copy, and even that went missing from a locked drawer in my apartment. That's when I drove to San Vicente to find someone who'd been there, someone who'd seen the last known performance. His name was Carlos Ibarra, an audio tech who had worked freelance sound jobs across California in the 80s. I found him through an old fanzine contact who swore Carlos had been at Aurora's final show in Anaheim, 3 nights before the disappearance. It wasn't even on the tour schedule. A private industry event, invite only. Carlos was hard to pin down. He'd moved inland, somewhere near Barstow, into what looked like a converted Airstream trailer full of antique radio gear. He met me with this nervous energy, chain smoking and talking like every sentence was a secret he regretted learning. When I asked about the show, he shook his head. You think they vanished in the air? That jet was just the cleanup. They were already gone, man. Whatever sang that night, it wasn't them. I asked what he meant. He looked at me, dead serious. The soundboard didn't pick up anything. No vocal feed, no instruments. Just silence. But the room was vibrating like it was the loudest show I'd ever worked. People were dancing, screaming, crying, but when I played back the recording later, nothing. Dead tape. I asked if I could hear it. He disappeared into the back of the trailer for 10 minutes. When he returned, he was pale. I can't find the reel. That's when I noticed something on his wrist. A faded stamp, one of those blacklight-only ones clubs use. But this wasn't from a club. It was a symbol I'd seen before, faintly burned into the back cover of the Walkman I'd found. A small, hollow circle, surrounded by 4 uneven points. Aurora's original logo had 5 points, 1 for each member. But this? 4. 1 gone. Carlos caught me staring at it. Yeah, he whispered. One of them came back. I didn't sleep that night. Carlos's words kept echoing, one of them came back. I wanted to ask him what he meant. Which one? When? How? But by the time I worked up the nerve to message him the next day, his number was dead. I drove back out to Barstow that weekend. The trailer was gone. Completely. As if no one had ever lived there. Even the patch of land where it sat looked strangely untouched. No tire tracks. No power hookup stubs, not even a dry rectangle in the dirt. Just desert, clean and flat. I spent the next 3 months combing through fan forums, library archives, and old record store basements. I posted anonymously on obscure boards and scanned microfilm until my eyes burned. A few leads fizzled out. One woman claimed she had Lacey's hairbrush, but it was actually from a Barbie styling head. One guy swore he'd jammed with Marcus in '94, but turned out to be a meth head from Bakersfield. Then, in early March of 2006, I got a package. No return address. No name. Just a small brown box wrapped in string, with a note inside that said, "Found this cleaning out my brother's storage. Thought it might be yours." Inside, a cassette. TDK. Standard black. No label. But I recognized it immediately. I didn't know how, but I knew. I held it up to the light. Scratches like coral scars. Tape slightly warped. I placed it into my deck with a weird reverence. I half expected it to scream. Instead, it started with silence. Then, footsteps. Concrete hallway. A door opening. Then a voice. Still think we're near Baja. But it smells wrong. Like salt and metal. And, there's no sunlight. The voice was male this time. Calm. Measured. It sounded like Marcus. They keep playing the same chord progression on loop. It's not music anymore. It's like someone remembering music. There's a long pause. Then whispering. A second voice in the background, hard to make out. A girl. He's back, but it's not him. The tape ends with static. Then that melody again. The reversed lullaby. I reached out to someone who had claimed online to be Lacey's cousin, a woman named Tasha, who now worked at a second-hand bookstore in Portland. We met in a cramped back room full of dusty shelves and antique card catalogs. She was in her 40s, denim jacket covered in iron-on patches. And she didn't smile once. "You said something about Marcus. About his voice on a new tape?" I nodded. I played it for her. She went cold. "That's not Marcus," she said immediately. "That sounds like him, but it's not. He never used phrases like that. And the rhythm of his speech is wrong. It's like someone trying to sound like him." I asked if she'd heard from anyone else in the band. She took a deep breath. Then told me something that has haunted me since. In the summer of 1999, just 7 years before I found the Walkman, she'd gotten a postcard in the mail. No return address. Just a single photograph taped to the front. It showed a stage. Empty. Worn velvet curtain. A spotlight angled at the mic stand. In the foreground, barely visible, was a hand, reaching toward the light. On the back of the card, one line in red marker. "Encore begins when no one claps." She burned the photo a week later. But she remembered every detail. In June of that year, I visited a man named Thomas Dyer. He had been Aurora 5's sound engineer for their short-lived US tour in '86. He'd never spoken publicly about them, not once. I only found him because an old roadie listed his name in a YouTube comment thread under a digitized VHS of the band's only televised performance. Thomas lived in a care home in Encino. Early onset dementia, they told me. But when I said the name Aurora 5, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "They weren't supposed to sing on that flight." I sat down, asked him what he meant. He smiled, slow and tired, and began tracing circles on his hospital tray with his finger. They recorded something in San Vicente. A track that wasn't on the album. Something private, just for themselves. TJ called it, the reverse room. Said it was a joke. But they were scared when it was done. Kim wouldn't touch her headphones for 2 days. I asked if he had a copy. He laughed. "You can't copy silence." That phrase again. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it. The silence that vibrates. The tape that records nothing. The stage where sound doesn't exist, but the memory of it does. Before I left, Thomas handed me a folded napkin. Shaky handwriting. A phone number. A name. That's the one who came back. The name? Lacey Rivers. I called the number that night. Straight to voicemail. A woman's voice. Soft. Familiar. Just 2 words. Leave nothing. I didn't, but someone called me back 2 nights later. A man. Raspy, like he hadn't spoken in weeks. "You're looking for the wrong thing," he said. "It's not about where they went. It's about what they heard before they left." I asked who he was. He just said, "Encore's still playing. You just can't hear it yet." Then silence. Except it wasn't. I swear I heard a faint hum behind the deadline. Like a chord, or a key being held, forever. I found him through an old message board buried behind 5 layers of redirects and 404 errors. The forum was called Echo Pulse, dedicated to rare live performances and lost audio anomalies. Mostly it was filled with metalheads trying to decode reversed Aussie tracks or rave kids chasing myths about haunted club tapes. But one thread stood out. Saw LR in 2001, not a lookalike. Not a joke. The poster's handle was Sub Pacific 1. The post was old, dated September 2006, and barely anyone had replied. But the way he described it, I knew he wasn't making it up. She didn't look older, just slower, like a record played at the wrong speed. Her movements didn't match the sound. But it was her, Lacey Rivers, I swear. The thread included a scanned flyer for a small local festival in Oregon, Shore Bloom 2001. Held near Brookings. Acoustic acts, mostly indie folk, nothing flashy. But scribbled at the bottom, added by hand, was a last-minute performer. Surprise solo set, LR, from LA. I traced the IP of the original poster through the site's ancient backend with the help of a friend who works in digital forensics. Miraculously, the email attached to the account still existed. I sent a single line. "I believe you. I found the tape." He replied within 2 hours. His name was Jeremy. Lived in Coos Bay. Still had the flyer, and something else. "I have her set. I recorded it. Not the whole thing, but enough. You need to hear it." I drove out the next day. Jeremy lived above a bait shop, in a small, cluttered loft that smelled like damp books and old wires. He looked younger than I expected, early 30s, anxious, like he hadn't had a visitor in years. His walls were covered in VHS boxes and shelves of labeled cassette tapes. He didn't waste time, just pulled out a dusty tape case, cracked it open, and popped the cassette into a battered deck. Hit play. I wasn't prepared. The sound was soft, grainy, acoustic guitar, but not quite in tune. Then her voice. It was her. I knew it was her. Same fragile soprano, same signature whisper slide into high notes. But there was something wrong. The lyrics made no sense. They were like fragments, almost English, words out of order, a chorus that didn't repeat, just built like a spiral, never looping back. "I am you again, not you. The shore remembers what the sea won't keep. I'm not, you will, we sleep." Then silence. And then, faintly, static. But inside it, something else. A second track, backwards, hidden beneath the live recording. Like it was bleeding through from another recording entirely. Jeremy looked at me. "It started doing that after the festival," he said. "The second voice wasn't there at first." I asked him what he meant. He handed me the original mic cassette he'd used at the show. It had a date etched in the corner, June 24, 2001. Then, underneath it, scratched by hand much later, were 2 words. Encore Ghost. I digitized the tape when I got back to my apartment. Ran the second audio layer through a reversal filter, slowed it down, tried isolating the frequencies. The second voice was male. Barely audible. Sounded like it had been recorded in an aircraft hangar or somewhere with massive echo. What it said still makes my skin crawl. Flight 041JG. Airspeed unknown. Cabin lights failing. She is singing again. Can't block it out. Then static. Then a loud bang, like a pressurized seal breaking. Then nothing. But the waveform didn't end. It kept going for 23 more seconds of absolute silence. But when I ran spectral analysis, I found a low-frequency pattern shaped like music notation. It formed a bar of melody. I printed it, sent it to a music theory friend. She played it back on piano. It was the reversed lullaby. Exactly the same. I returned to Jeremy 2 weeks later. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to tell him I was close to something. I didn't know what, but close. The bait shop was closed. Locked. The upstairs apartment window was broken from the inside. I knocked. No answer. I checked local reports. There was no Jeremy listed as a tenant at that address. The store had been abandoned since 1997. I checked my phone. His number was gone from my call logs. His emails were missing from my inbox. Only the digitized tape file remained. There was only one thing left I could do. Go back to where it started. Back to Carver's Bluff. I brought a field recorder, an old Polaroid, and a flashlight. I arrived just before dusk. Low tide. Fog thick on the horizon. I walked the beach. Listened. Waited. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the air changed. Not colder, just stiller. Like the wind had paused. And then I heard it. Music. Not from a speaker. Not from any visible source. A single voice. Distant. Familiar. Lacey. Singing the same melody. The one from the tape. From the plane. From the dreams. I turned on the recorder. The light on it flickered, then died. The Polaroid clicked on its own. I hadn't even pressed the shutter. I took it out. Waited. It developed slowly in the cold air. When the image came through, I dropped it. There, standing at the edge of the water, was a figure in red, gold trim glinting, face down, hair long and dark. And in her hand, unmistakable in shape and color, a Walkman. I didn't tell anyone about the photo. Not yet. I hid it in a sealed envelope and mailed it to myself. Twice. Once to my apartment, once to a rented mailbox across town. Just in case. I didn't trust digital anymore. Files vanished. Calls dropped. Even my recorder failed to save the audio from that night. It showed 22 minutes of runtime, but when I played it back, only silence. Still, I had the image. And I had the melody, humming in my brain like a ghost I couldn't shake. I posted anonymously on several obscure boards, asking if anyone else had heard a woman singing on a beach, any beach, matching the same key. I described the reversed lullaby without using the band's name. I expected silence, maybe a few trolls. Instead, I got 3 replies within 48 hours. All from different parts of the world. One from coastal Iceland, 1999. A man walking alone at night swore he heard a girl's voice singing what he thought was a lullaby in reverse Latin. He followed it to the edge of a cliff. Nothing was there. His phone had recorded only static, but his dog refused to walk that trail ever again. One from Okinawa, Japan, 2003. A group of scuba divers surfaced early after 2 members panicked underwater. One claimed she'd heard a chorus beneath the seafloor. Not whale song. Human. The dive computer showed their maximum depth had been 41.9 meters. And one from a retired Navy sonar tech, stationed on a deep-sea recon vessel near the Mariana Trench in 2000. He didn't share much, just a redacted image of sonar readouts. But he left one line beneath it. Frequencies form music when reversed. 5 points. 1 gone. The pattern returns every 19 years. My blood went cold. I began piecing it together. July 1986, disappearance. July 2005, Walkman appears. June 2024, was only a year away. 19 years. Like a cycle. But before I could dig deeper, things got weird. Again, I came home one day to find my apartment doors slightly open. No forced entry. Nothing missing. Except one thing. The original flyer from the Shore Bloom Festival, the one with LR scrawled at the bottom, was gone from my drawer. That night, I got a phone call from a number marked unknown, blocked. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 12 seconds long. I still have it saved. It begins with a slow inhale. Then, softly, a voice. Please stop. You're dragging her back. Click. A week later, I was visited by two men claiming to be with the FAA. They flashed badges too quickly, asked about the NX-041JG flight, the one that never existed. They weren't interested in the Walkman or the photo. Just one question: have you come into possession of any analog audio containing unlisted harmonics? That was their exact wording. I asked what they meant. One of them stared at me and said, "Some songs aren't meant to be remembered. You understand?" They left without incident. But I knew then. Someone else had known all along. I finally broke and contacted Tasha, Lacey's cousin, again. I told her everything: the beach, the figure, the cassette Jeremy had given me, even the sonar reports. She listened quietly, then said something I didn't expect. We knew she was singing again. Mom said she dreamed about it once a week since '98. I asked her what she meant. She said she heard Lacey singing through the walls. But not our walls. Some other place. A room made of water. She paused. She said it was her voice, but it wasn't coming from her mouth. That same week, I received a padded envelope in my rented mailbox. No return address. No postmark. Inside, a microcassette. No label. And a small folded note. This is the last rehearsal. I found an old microcassette player on eBay. It arrived 2 days later. I sat alone, 2:13 a.m., and pressed play. The tape was warped, voices dragging, bleeding. At first, laughter, studio chatter, someone tuning a guitar. Then Lacey's voice. Can we try the chorus again? But slower? You hear the band count in. 1, 2, 3. The chord hits. The melody begins. And then the screaming starts. Not from the band. Not from the room. It sounds like it's coming through the tape. Far away. Deep. Like the howl of a plane's engine pitched into human agony. Then silence. And one last voice, faint as breath on glass. She's almost finished the set. I don't know what's coming in 2024. But I know it's coming. The tide is turning. And I swear, sometimes when I walk the beach near Carver's Bluff, I still hear her. Not in the wind. Not in the waves. But underneath them. A melody rising. A show that never ended. A stage without a crowd. And a girl in red, standing just offshore. Holding a Walkman the ocean refuses to bury. June 17, 2024. I woke to static. Not from my speakers. Not from any device. It was coming from the walls. A low, pulsing hiss, as though the air had picked up a signal, not loud, just persistent. Like a memory trying to breathe. I turned everything off, laptop, phone, even the fridge. Still there. And beneath the static, a pattern. Not a melody. A countdown. I don't know how I knew, but I felt it. Each pulse like a second being erased. That day, the internet started buzzing. First in small corners, paranormal Reddit threads, encrypted Discord servers, old ARG chat rooms that hadn't been active in years. Then TikToks. Then news tickers. People were hearing it again. From places it shouldn't have reached. An offshore oil rig in the North Sea reported an unexplained frequency hijacking their emergency band. The crew described a girl's voice singing a slow melody, reversed, childlike. They evacuated the rig 24 hours later due to mechanical failure. But one worker never came back. His boots were found by the helipad. Next to them, scribbled on a broken flare shell. Flight 041JG, set never ended. In Utah, an old AM station, WXRL 590, suddenly began broadcasting what locals called ghost pop. No DJs, no ads, just lo-fi music fragments layered over hissing vocals. It repeated every 19 minutes. The FCC shut the station down. But they never identified the signal's source. Someone on a ham radio forum extracted the waveform and matched it to an early live Aurora 5 demo from 1985. A demo that was never released publicly. He knew, because he owned the only acetate pressing. It had been locked in storage since the day they vanished. The waveform wasn't identical. It was mirrored. June 24, 2024, Shore Bloom, Oregon. After 23 years, the festival returned. No promotion. No social media. Just a series of printed flyers that began appearing on telephone poles, mailboxes, even wedged inside old cassette cases at thrift stores across the Pacific Northwest. Same handwriting. Same words. Surprise set. LR, one night only. I drove 10 hours to get there. The site was a field near the coast. Empty stage. No crowd. Just people standing silently. A few dozen. No one speaking. All watching the same spot. The microphone. At exactly 9:17 p.m. The same time I'd first heard the melody at Carver's Bluff, the wind died. And she stepped onto the stage. Lacey. Or someone in her shape. Red dress. Gold trim. Hair down. Head lowered. No music played. No announcement. No light. She sang. No microphone. No band. Just her voice. Soft, lilting, backwards. I didn't understand the words. I don't think we were meant to. People cried. One woman dropped to her knees, hands over her ears. A man turned and ran straight into the forest. Someone near me whispered, "It's the bridge section." From the plane, she sang for exactly 5 minutes. Then she stopped and vanished. No one saw her leave. She didn't walk off. She didn't disappear in a flash. She just wasn't there anymore. June 25, 2024. I woke in my car. Still parked near the edge of the field. The recorder I'd brought? Full battery. But no audio. The Polaroid I snapped? A white blur. With 5 faint silhouettes in the center. The 5th shape had returned. Back in town, I found a cassette in the glove box. One I hadn't packed. It had no label. Just a handwritten note tucked inside the case. For the last listener. I haven't played it. I keep it in a drawer. Wrapped in red cloth. I don't know why, just instinct. But sometimes when the night is quiet enough and the wind pushes in through the cracks of my window, I swear I can hear it trying to hum. So if you ever hear a reversed lullaby on the shore, or your radio picks up a song that doesn't exist, or you find an unmarked tape in a place it shouldn't be, don't press play. Not yet, because some encores were never meant for the living, and some singers don't leave the stage. They wait. July 3, 2024. I kept the cassette in that drawer for days. I didn't touch it, didn't label it, just stared at it like a grenade without a pin. But it began affecting the space around it. My apartment, usually silent at night, had begun producing sound. Not loud, not music, clicks, whispers, the slow, mechanical whir of a tape deck spooling itself. And every morning, something would be slightly out of place. Drawers ajar, books turned backward. One night, all the clocks in the room stopped at 9:17 p.m. I hadn't even wound the tape. I hadn't touched it, but it was playing, somehow. I decided I needed help, not from internet sleuths, but from someone who knew audio. I reached out to Vanessa Cho, a former analog restoration specialist from the National Audio Archive in DC. She'd worked with degraded magnetic media for nearly 20 years before burning out in 2019 after a breakdown that was never publicly explained. I tracked her to a small repair shop she now runs under a false name in Baltimore, specializing in reel-to-reel transfers and studio mastering. She agreed to meet on one condition. You don't let me keep the tape. You don't even let me see it until we're inside a Faraday cage. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. July 5, 2024, 11:40 p.m. The room was cold, on purpose. She said temperature affected magnetic anomalies. Her lab was buried in a converted walk-in freezer beneath the shop, lined with copper mesh and silent as a tomb. I placed the cassette on the table. She didn't touch it right away. Just looked at it for a long time. This isn't commercial grade. No brand stamp. No serial. You sure this was made post-85? I nodded. It found me, not the other way around. She laughed, dry, short. Yeah, that's how the bad ones work. I asked what she meant. She opened a drawer and pulled out a notebook. Inside were photographs, Polaroids of cassettes, burned ones, cracked reels, melted magnetic tape pulled into shapes. One photo stood out. A melted TDK shell, twisted, half crushed. Its tape had formed what looked like a spiral, 5 loops. One broken. She tapped it with her pen. We used to call them resonant ghosts. Magnetic fields that record more than sound. Things that leak through. Things that want to be played. Then she loaded my tape into her test deck. A waveform screen lit up, clean, balanced. But no sound. She hit play. Nothing. Then she slowed the playback to 2/3 speed. And it began. First, not music. Not a voice. Just breath. Slow, even breathing. As if the tape were recording someone trying to remember being alive. Then a sound like fabric. Then, humming. Familiar. The reversed lullaby. But it wasn't Lacey's voice anymore. It was, younger. A child. Vanessa leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Then she stopped the tape. Rewound it. Played again. No, this wasn't recorded. This was generated. I asked her what she meant. She pointed to the waveform. That's mathematically perfect. No natural voice hits intervals that exact. It's like it was composed by something trying to mimic emotion. And failing. She hit pause. There's something underneath it. We applied spectral layers. At the lowest register, below human hearing, was another track. A voice. Barely there. Repeating a single phrase in loop. Final boarding. NX041JG. Last call. Last call. Then, on the last rotation, it said, "Gate closed. No returns." Vanessa stepped away from the deck. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, this tape wasn't recorded in our world. I thought she meant it metaphorically. But then she looked at me. "Do you still have the photo?" I pulled the Polaroid from my bag, the one from Shorebloom. The 5 silhouettes. She held it under infrared. A signature appeared, invisible to the eye, burned into the emulsion by heat or something deeper. One name. K. Daly. The pilot. The one who wasn't on any official registry. The one no one saw. The watcher. Vanessa looked pale. Wherever this tape came from, it came back with someone who never left. That night I returned to my motel. The power was out. My recorder, the one I hadn't touched since June, was sitting on the bed. Already playing. No cassette inside. Just playing nothing. I leaned in, and under the hiss, I swear I heard it. A whisper. Not from the machine, but from the walls. "She's not done singing." July 9, 2024. Vanessa refused to keep the tape. She sealed it in a lead-lined pouch, handed it back to me like it was radioactive, and told me something I haven't forgotten since. "Whatever that voice is trying to finish, you're part of it now. And if you hear your name on a recording that you didn't make, run." I drove straight back to the coast. Not to Carver's Bluff this time, but further north, to a fishing town called Klamath Edge. I'd found a post there buried in an old Coast Guard debrief from 1986. It had been redacted, but one paragraph had slipped through. Unidentified male, approximately 35-40, found disoriented on southern cliffs at 03:41 a.m. Claimed to have survived crash. Denied being passenger. Referenced flight NX041JG. No matching manifest. Logged as transient. Transferred to state care under sealed order. His name wasn't in the record. But I found him anyway. Peter Rains. Born 1947. Discharged Navy pilot. Vanished in 1981. Declared AWOL. Turned up in 1986, just days after Aurora 5's disappearance, babbling about altitude singing and pressure songs. Locked away in the Oregon State Hospital under a sealed psychiatric hold until his quiet release in 2001. No family, no visitors, but he wasn't dead. I found him, alive, living under the name Ray Nix in a long-term care facility in Crescent City. He was nearly 80 now, mostly silent, but when I said the flight number, his eyes moved for the first time. NX041JG, I whispered. He blinked slowly, then said, "She was already singing before we lifted off." The staff gave me 15 minutes alone with him. I turned on a tape recorder. And this is what he said, word for word. It wasn't a flight, it was a holding pattern. They said it would be 90 minutes. But the sky stretched. The clouds opened wrong. I saw cities upside down. I saw windows that didn't have glass, just memory. The band didn't speak, they just listened, like the song was already inside them. He began to cry, slowly, quietly. One of them changed halfway through. Not like transformed, just drifted, like part of them shifted backwards. She smiled like she recognized me, but I wasn't in her past yet. He looked me dead in the eyes. Do you understand that? I hadn't met her yet. But she'd already left me. I asked him who she was. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached slowly into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out a cassette. Cracked. Labeled in marker, tracking beacon, HARMONIC 5. He pressed it into my palm. This is how you find the next door. Then he leaned back, eyes closed. But don't follow the music. Follow the silence. That's where she's hiding. That night, I listened to the tape in my car. At first, nothing. Then a piercing frequency, barely audible, which slowly evolved into faint ambient echoes. Not music, not voice, environment, as if someone had recorded the space between worlds. Then, for 3 seconds, a voice. Lacey's? He gave you the tape too early. But that means you're close. The tape ends. No hiss, no click, just a sense that something's waiting for you to notice it. July 11, 2024, 3:17 a.m. I wake up gasping. The air in the room feels wrong. Compressed, like I'm breathing inside a sealed cabin. On my nightstand, a Polaroid I didn't take. It shows me, asleep, in that exact bed. And at the edge of the frame, a shape in red. Not clear, not in focus, but definitely human. Beneath it, in smeared red ink. You're almost there. Just don't turn off the recorder. July 12, 2024, 9:17 p.m. I waited all day. Didn't eat. Didn't leave the apartment. The air felt too still. Like the building was bracing for impact. Or sound. I placed the cassette from Rains into the deck. Left it paused. Set up my camera. My field recorder. One mic facing the window. One facing me. And I waited. At exactly 9:17 p.m., I pressed record. I spoke aloud into the mic. This is July 12, 2024. 9:17 p.m. This is the final tape. If you're hearing this, I don't know what that means yet. The lights flickered. A low hum started in the floor. Not electrical, not mechanical, harmonic. Something was tuning the room. I stayed quiet. The silence was dense, vibrating. Then, audio emerged. Not from speakers. From air. A sound like an old radio dial sweeping, skipping frequencies. Picking up shards of songs. Musical note, don't wake up, if you're still inside. Musical note, final curtain is behind you. Musical note, flight path lost, adjust to memory. And then, her voice. Lacey. Clearer than ever. Not singing, speaking, directly. You hear me now. Finally. This is not a haunting. It's an invitation. Every tape is a map. Every note, a door. She paused. I'm in the interval between songs. The place between the end and the applause. There's no time here, only sequence. If you're listening, don't stop the tape. Suddenly, the room dimmed, not the light, the color. Everything turned slightly gray, like the world had been drained a degree too far. My reflection in the dark window? Didn't move when I did. It just stared, then turned its head before I did. I kept recording. The air pressure dropped. My ears popped. The voice continued. Fragmented now. Cutting in and out like a scratched CD. Encore isn't a return, it's a loop? I didn't survive the crash. I survived the recording. They're all still playing. Every note. Over and over. They just needed someone to press record on the outside.